Man, this is Deion Dawkins, man, and you're listening to The Scoop on OurScoop.com. You already know.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to The Scoop, OurScoop.com's podcast, Season 8, Episode 3. I am John DiCarlo, the editor of OurScoop.com, joined by one of our most valued staff members, Javon Edmonds. Everybody else, not here today. I don't know why. Maybe they don't love us. Do you think they secretly hate our guts, Javon?
I don't know. I say just put them on the line. You know, that'll solve a lot of things. You know?
I like telling Sam sometimes, like if somebody doesn't get back to him, like, do you think it's because they secretly hate your guts? I mean, he never believes me and it's just more a joke, but I don't know. I'm sure they love us. So what's going on, buddy? How are you?
I'm good. Hoping for some good news by the end of the week. How's things your way?
Good. I'm hanging in. I'm all right. All right. Ready for the season to start. Ready to discuss our interview with Mike Vreeswyk. Talked to Mike for this podcast and for our Legends of North Broad Street series, and had a lot of fun talking to Mike about our Owl Scoop draft. We've got plenty of football to discuss here at the back end of the pod. Famous number 3s, Javon. I mean, there are a few I can think of off the top of my head, but what do you have here?
Ruth, Paul, Iverson, Wade. That's just the start. Yeah.
It's a lot of top ones. If Kyle was here, he might say Dale Murphy, former Atlanta Brave. Russell Wilson.
Oh, yeah.
I wouldn't put Russ in the, like Babe Ruth and Allen Iverson, I feel like they're way up there. I don't know if there are any other. I'm sure there are a few athletes who like maybe switched number 3 at the end of their career, but I think you hit on all the top ones.
Yeah, I can't think of any other ones.
Javon, what meal or meals are you going to eat down in the greater Baltimore Metroplex that you're going to miss once you get back to Philly? Although you're like 90 minutes away from home. I make it sound like it's another country, but anything you're going to cram into your last few days at home?
Chicken boxes and crab cakes. That's just the two things where no matter who tries to replicate them, no one else does it like Baltimore, except for Chicago. Chicago does a good chicken box. But outside of that, you can't find great seafood and great chicken boxes outside of Baltimore.
We could always squeeze it in if we're, driving down to Durham, North Carolina for the Duke game in a couple of weeks. If we get a really early start and we're like hour and a half into our trip, it's like 8:30. That's too early for probably.
You know what? The Navy.
Who's up for crab cakes? Who's up for crab cakes 8:30 in the morning?
Look, when we go down for Navy,
yeah,
we can stop at somebody's seafood spot.
All right.
Yeah, Bubblegum Shrimp down at the harbor. Have a good time.
All right. That sounds good. So again, had a lot of fun talking to Mike Vreeswyk. Again, a guy who scored 1,650 career points at Temple, was part, of course, of the 87-88 team that was ranked number 1, lost just once in the regular season, UNLV, made it as far as the Elite 8 before good old Billy King, who later went on to be a seasoned GM with the Sixers and the Nets. In his Duke days, shut down Mark Macon and prevented John Chaney from going to a Final Four. But Mike was part of some great teams. We've talked to him before on this podcast, talked to him before for the site. And again, if you're a longtime Temple fan, a lot of this stuff isn't necessarily new to you. But again, we wanted to touch base with Mike. He was on my team that I drafted. Couldn't get it across the finish line because Kyle out-campaigned us, I suppose, beat us by 12 votes on Twitter, but had a lot of fun with Mike. And again, what we're doing here is you're going to hear part of this interview on the Scoop. And then the other part of it, or I shouldn't say the other part of it, those of you who subscribe to Owl Scoop will get access to the entire interview. So what you're going to hear as follows here on the Scoop is Mike and I just having fun talking about the team that I drafted, talking about Jim Maloney, the late Jim Maloney, the great coach that he was. I drafted him as as my coach for our team. Talked to him about Ernest Pollard, one of the guys who drafted in the late rounds. Ernest was John Chaney's first Prop 48 recruit. So Ernest was a really good player at Roman Catholic and had to sit out his freshman year back then. The NCAA initial eligibility standards, which were initially known as Prop 48, did not allow players to play or practice with that team and sit out, pay their own way that first year. But Ernest was still a really important part of the program for just reasons on the court and off the court. Asked Mike about just how he learned to shoot. You'll hear him talk here about, although he later earned the nickname of Vreeswyk, he became a great mid-range shooter. He took a lot of pride in that. Talked to him about just, how he plays a part in keeping some of the former players together, and talked to him more just about John Chaney. It's been 17 months since he passed. And then if you are a subscriber to Owl Scoop, you're going to hear more about Mike talked about, how he was recruited by Pete Carroll, put something on Twitter recently about that. You'll hear him talk more about the 87-88 team that season, how they had so many close games, some of his former teammates playing overseas, the current Temple team, the coaching that he does now at the George School. That's all of what you'll hear in the full interview if you subscribe. But so again, you're going to hear the part of this interview that you're going to hear now is for the podcast. And again, like I said, Mike and I had a great time. He's always generous with this time. So we will play this for you now. All right. We are thrilled to have with us once again on the Scoop and on our Legends of North Broad Street series, Mike Vreeswyk. Mike has always been so great with his time in the past. We've talked to him before, and so many of you, I'm sure, who are big Temple fans know the name Mike Vreeswyk. Mike is kind enough to join us on vacation. He's at the beach. Mike, thanks for doing this. How are you?
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm great. How are you?
Hanging in, doing okay. Sorry, our owlscoop.com Temple Hoops all-time fantasy team didn't pull it out in the finals. We lost to Kyle's team. Mike campaigned for us, the way we did this, and we had a lot of fun with it. And the debates and the arguments and the teasing is half the fun. And we were trying to get votes on Twitter, and I think we ultimately ended up losing by 12 votes. Maybe one of these days we'll find a way to simulate these games. But Mike, I remember when I posted the link to this thing on the Temple basketball Facebook page that you run. And I remember you saying like, hey, there were some hits and misses at both ends of the draft. I know you've got a lot of other things going on in your life, but when you looked at the list of the teams and stuff, what did you think of this?
No, this is all great fun. And this is what sports is all about, really. Mm-hmm. When it's all said and done, the players go out and they play to the best of their ability. And they just leave it up to the fans and the media, and all the other interested parties to have these fun debates. And this is what's great about sports. For me personally, like I said, I never would even imagine when I was playing that I would be mentioned in the same conversation as some of these all-time greats. Just being part of these types of debates and arguments is just really a thrill and an honor for me, because all I did was try to play as hard as I could and make my coach and teammates proud. Then I just let everything else kind of fall where it falls, and 30, 40 years later, we're having fun debates and arguments like this, and it's just great.
It was 8 teams, and it was like a snake draft, like a fantasy football draft. And I had the 6th pick, and so Caden Steele, one of our staff members, we were joking with him and saying, you're going to take Mark Macon or Guy Rogers. He went with Guy Rogers. First round goes Guy Rogers, Mark Macon, Deontay Christmas, Lynn Greer, Khalif Wyatt. I took Aaron, and then Eddie went right after him. And then Kyle, who ended up winning the championship based on votes, takes Bill Milkby and then Lavoy Allen coming back around. I was hoping to get Mark Jackson. I got you in the 4th round, the 27th overall pick, which I thought was tremendous value there. Do you think you were overdrafted there, underdrafted? I think that's good value for you. I think you could have gone earlier.
Yeah, I just love the fact that I'm up there in the top 30. It depends really on what kind of team folks are building. Basketball is, it's not quite as specialized as football per se, but there's definitely different positions and different needs. Guys that can handle the ball and pass, guys that can bang and rebound, and guys that can score and shoot. So, based on how you're building your team, that's fine by me. I did mention some hits and misses, and I certainly feel all of the former players are all family members.
Yeah.
So I would never say this guy didn't deserve to be drafted here or there. The only thing I would say is I thought that there were maybe some players towards the end of the draft.
That's where it got weird.
When you're at the end of the draft, I mean, you're looking for players. I guess 100 players or so were picked, but some names appeared on here that you kind of would never think would be on a list of all-time Temple players. And if you go back and look at some of the stats, I think that would bear that out.
One of the other things that we did was we drafted, we thought, because the program has only had a limited number of coaches over the years, and we thought it would be hard to take each of us take a head coach. So we thought it would be fun to take assistant coaches. And, we had Dan Leibovitz was a great part of this. Varun Kumar, who's written for us, he drafted Dan as his coach. And Dan's like you, he chimes in. He's kind of like a historian of the program. I took Jim Maloney, and I was hoping you could talk about Jim Maloney. Again, if you're a Temple fan, about the late Jim Maloney. But I think if you're maybe like a casual fan or a younger fan of the program, you may not know just how special he was to everything. And again, another part of the Temple program that was gone too soon. And I was just hoping you could talk about Jim Maloney, your memories of him, and just kind of put into context what he meant to Coach Chaney and the whole thing.
Yeah, well, Coach Maloney really was, sort of I want to say the heart and soul of that program. He bridged that gap, I think, between Casey and Coach Chaney. He remained on. He had an eye for talent. He was a very good recruiter. And could he could pick out some diamonds in the rough, but a lot of people don't realize that the matchup zone was really the basis and the foundation of that was really Coach Maloney's. Mm-hmm. And then of course the years and years that he had with Coach Chaney, Coach Chaney kind of fine-tuned it, but the base and the foundation was really something that Coach Maloney devised. The other thing about Coach Maloney, he was one of the few people that would and could disagree with Coach Chaney. Mm-hmm. They would have spirited discussions on things, and Coach Maloney would not give any ground. Coach Chaney could be very persuasive, as you know, and he's got that type of personality, and he could, his arguments rarely, when I'm talking about Coach Chaney, when he has an argument, he rarely concedes, let's say. But right. Coach Maloney was one of the few, if maybe the only person that could stand up to Coach and go toe to toe with him on whatever the subject might be. And there were plenty of times when they disagreed, but it was it was all for the benefit of the program at the end of the day.
Mike, one of the guys that I took in the last round of the draft, and we all talked about our different approaches and tried to add some character picks and just bring some fun into it. Like in the 12th round, I took Greg Jefferson. Now Greg's stats don't don't add up, but he had that one great game that helped Temple get to the Elite Eight in 2001. And then in the 13th and final round, I took another one of your former teammates, Ernest Pollard. And, again, like Ernest doesn't have the eye-popping stats that you had, but he was Coach Chaney's first Prop 48 recruit. And I remember talking to Ernest when Coach retired, and just like he was, in my mind, he's significant in at least in that regard, because that, as you know, was so significant to what Coach Chaney did in giving people opportunities. And I remember talking to him about that. And I was hoping you could talk a little about Ernest, again, a guy that isn't at the top of the career scoring list or anything like that, but had a role on those teams in the program. And I think was kind of significant in that way. And I wanted to ask you about him.
Yeah, absolutely. Ernest and I came in together. Well, I think he was 1 year after me, but he was Coach's first quote unquote Prop 48. Mm-hmm. I know Ernest was always special in Coach's heart. Ernest was a fantastic, just a fantastic, dynamic, high school player. Mm-hmm. And Temple was lucky to get him. I do think that year that he sat out, it can't help. Academically, or if you want to say that you can study and work on your grades, so that's fine, and there's an argument there, I guess. But is the sitting out athletically, although you can practice, it's just really not the same. You're not traveling with the team.
Yeah, you're away from the team.
You're just at practice. I think that really hurt him, as well as probably many others that were in Ernest's shoes. Mm-hmm. And the following year, the 3 years that he was eligible, while he wasn't, like you said, he wasn't the focal point of the team, and he didn't have, numbers that stood out. He was, he was an integral part of our success. Doing anything that Coach Chaney would ask him to do. By the time he was a senior, he was a starter, and he knew his role, and he did it quite well.
Mike, we've talked about this before too, and again, anybody who follows you on Twitter knows this, and follows some of the stuff that you drop in on the Facebook page knows this too. You've just been great in doing a lot to keep the former players together. You've hosted them at your house, and just have a real appreciation for not just like the time that you spent in the program, but the history of the program as a whole. Who are some of the other guys that, like, on this list of people that we drafted, like guys that really stand out to you, guys that you've had either great stories with or interacted with, that maybe guys from different generations that you didn't get a chance to play with, but you formed a bond with?
Yeah. So our team, when I say our team, I mean the teams from 85 through 89, or give or take a year in either direction. Mm-hmm. We're very, very close. And while I helped to keep us close, I really can't take, the credit for initiating it. Darren Pearsall is really the glue for the closeness of our teams. We are on, to this day, we have a group text, mm-hmm. That we have approximately, I think there's 18 of us mm-hmm. that are on that text. We communicate each and every day. Mm-hmm. There's the next group that kind of came in after that, mm-hmm. Which is like the Aaron McKees and the Brunson and Eddie Jones and Lynn Greer and Brokenbaugh and Levon Alston. I mean, that group is also pretty close. And our group and their group, we do from time to time do things together with Mark Jackson and the like. I think the group after that, which now we'd be getting up into the into the Dunphy years. I I don't feel that there's much closeness there for whatever reason. But I do think it's important to have that family kind of atmosphere, because, you know, we all have that one thing in common where, you know, we played at Temple, and, you know, Coach Chaney said it best, you know, Temple isn't for everybody. You know, it's not cake and ice cream, I think he said, or, you know, something like that. So, you know, regardless of the era, that statement holds true. Temple really, you know, isn't for everybody. Inner city school, you know, so we have that bond, we have that connection. And a couple years ago, I put it out. I wanted to have an all years reunion. This was prior to COVID.
All right.
And I got a tremendous turnout. I think we had close to 40 or 45 former players from many different eras, even John, you know, the Casey eras, and even going back, you know, John Baum was there, for example. So we had, you know, 40, 45 players that spanned all the eras. I wanted to make that an annual thing. And then of course the pandemic hit, and, you know, I do want to ramp that up again, and, you know, start that, you know, as an annual thing, if possible, you know, if we can ever, you know, kind of get past some of the things going on with the pandemic.
And this was at your house, you had this?
I did, yeah. I had it at my house. I have a decent sized backyard where we kind of all hung out. There's some really nice pictures that, you know, that was put out there on Facebook with the entire group all sitting together. I could probably go find it if I looked. But it was, yeah, it was just a great day. A lot of stories were told, and, you know, it's something that I really looking forward to doing again.
I wonder what this is like for your family, and like for your son, Jack, who plays in college now at TCNJ. Like, I'm sure he's heard a lot about your career, and if he doesn't hear about it, someone else is going to remind him about it. And then all of a sudden you have this influx of all these people that were important to your life and important to the program. What was it like for him? What's it like for your family to have all these people come in and they're just sharing these stories that I'm sure there's not a dull story among any that were told that day?
Yeah, no, not at all. You know, my kids, my son Jack is 20 and my daughter is 22. She's
a good volleyball player, right? Am I making that up, or wasn't she a good volleyball player?
No, she was. She's one of the all-time best at Westchester University.
Yeah.
She just graduated, so, you know, it's almost like, you know, you see those pictures of a young, you know, Steph Curry, or a young, you know, Ken Griffey Jr. Just, you know, hanging around professional athletes from a young age because of the position that their father was in. And while I wasn't at that level, you know, my kids from the youngest age were always around these, you know, my former teammates, as well as Coach Chaney. You know, I would, you know, bring Jack and Julia to Temple games from when they were five years old, basically. And, you know, Coach always had time for them, and my teammates always had time for them. So, you know, they've just been around that. For them, they're not in all of that, because they feel like they're, you know, almost part of the family as well. So, and vice versa, by the way. You know, my teammates, they take an interest in what my kids are doing, just like I take an interest in what their kids are doing. And, you know, anytime that we're all in the same company, it's, you know, it's like they've known each other forever. And in fact, they have.
I asked last week, we had Deontay Christmas on for our podcast. And again, as part of this ongoing series that we're doing, and I just asked him a simple question. I said, what made you such a great shooter? And we've talked about this before. Again, you've been so kind with your time over the past 10 plus years and talking to us. And for people who haven't heard you talk about this before. How did you learn to shoot the basketball the way you did?
Well, a lot of people don't realize this. And a lot of people might tend to disagree for some reason, even though that I'm telling them from my personal experience. But I did not grow up with a 3-point line.
Right.
It's 3-point line is such a part of basketball now. So many people don't realize that at one point there was no 3-point line.
Yeah.
So my youth, all throughout my youth, all throughout high school, and in fact, my freshman year in college, there was no 3-point line.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody remembers me as a 3-point shooter, and that's fine. I personally don't like to be labeled as a 3-point shooter. I think my stats prove that. I actually had as many 2-point baskets as I had 3-point baskets. The best part of my game, and those that know me the best will say the same thing, but the best part of my game was the mid-range game, which is basically a lost art now.
Absolutely.
I had 1-2 dribble pull up that was, quite deadly. Let's say, I had a lot of success with that mid-range 1-2 dribble pull up. But growing up, I always had the ability to shoot. I wanted to be perfect, from 5 feet, and maybe I have a touch of OCD or whatever, but when I felt comfortable and my body felt good and my follow through felt good, and I was making shots from 5 feet, then I would step out one step, and I wanted to be perfect from 8 feet. Mm-hmm. And I did the same thing. And then I wanted to be perfect from the foul line. And then I just continued to expand my range, regardless that there was no 3-point line. And then I was, I strive to be perfect. You never can be, but, I would step out to 13 feet, and then I would step out to, 17, and, the 3-point line was 20 feet, let's say. And I had the ability to shoot from even beyond that area. And then, as a sophomore, they decided to put a 3-point line in. I was already shooting from there anyway.
Yeah.
But it never really affected, my mid-range game. Mm-hmm. And I'm proud of the fact that, when people say that all I did was shoot 3-pointers, I'm proud of the fact that I can actually point to the numbers. They're black and white, where I had just as many 2-point makes as I did 3-point makes.
Yeah, even though you had the Vreeswyk nickname.
Yeah, everybody loves the chicks dig the long ball type thing. It's like Kyle Schwarber. He hit 35. He's got 35 home runs, but he's batting like 205.
Yeah,
and you would never know he's batting 205. Because of the 35 home runs. The 3-point shot stands out. Obviously, it's worth an extra point. Gets the crowd excited. There's definitely advantage for your team if you can get an extra point. So yeah, I guess it does stand out. But the fact of the matter is, I actually had an even amount of 2-pointers as I did 3-pointers.
This might sound like a simple question too, Mike. Do you have, at the time when you went from your freshman year to sophomore year, and then the 3-point line becomes part of the game, were there any additional conversations in terms of what the staff was strategy, like making it more part of the offense, or was it kind of just like, all right, this is what it is. It's an opportunity for us to get an extra point. What was it like to be part of the game, part of the college game when that came into it?
It's a great question. And, my memory, the way I recollect it, Chaney never really made it point or focal point, or we never did anything different just because of that line was there. We might have done things differently defensively. Mm-hmm. And, the coach was a defensive first coach. So, if we were playing an opponent who had capable 3-point shooters, we would adjust accordingly on the defensive side. But offensively, we never did anything different. Coach's offense is ball control, limit turnovers, a shot, any type of shot is better than a turnover.
Yeah.
Coaches teams are always guard centric, 3-guard offense. And Coach Chaney always had guards that could shoot. Going back to his first recruit, Nate Blackwell, tremendous, just an absolute tremendous shooter. Howie Evans, tremendous shooter. I came in, I could shoot. Guys after me, Eddie Jones, Aaron McKee, shooters. Of course, Lynn Greer, shooter. So he's always had shooters. I don't think he ever did anything different because of the 3-point line. But the fact of the matter is, based on the skill set of his guards, it was definitely a weapon.
It's been 17 months now or so since Coach Chaney passed, and I'm sure it's nothing you ever get over. I imagine it's just maybe you hope that things maybe get a little bit easier with time. And again, you as well as anybody in the history of the program have been great in just sharing memories and processing it all and providing context for people. And again, just the stuff that you drop in on Twitter, it's great. It's required reading. Again, probably not enough time in a podcast or an interview to talk about it, but 17 months removed from it, are there any like new memories that come through your mind where you think, oh my God, I forgot about that, or something else that kind of jogs your memory? What's it like now for you?
Yeah. Every once in a while I'll remember some things. It puts a smile on my face. Mm-hmm. As you said, I try to keep the stories alive. This was a time when, it was basically it was almost pre-internet. Yeah. So you certainly didn't have social media. Mm-hmm. There was no way to tell these stories at the time. The only way to tell them was after the fact. Mm-hmm. I spent the entire decade of the 90s playing professionally in Europe. Mm-hmm. So I missed that part of coaches and the Temple teams. When I say miss, I wasn't able to be around. I wasn't able to attend games. I would be able to kind of keep up with what they're doing through conversations with my family, or, every once in a while, you could get the USA Today over there and you could read a little bit about them. But, it was at that time when I was overseas, I had, a lot of downtime that I started jotting down my memories. Mm-hmm. Not only Temple memories, but just basketball memories in general, going back to, some memories I had in high school, Temple memories, and then, some memorable moments from my time overseas. I started writing some of these short stories, and one thing led to another, and I actually ended up putting it all together. I did something on Facebook many years ago called, Monday's Random Memory. Mm-hmm. I did it every Monday for one whole year. And I got such great responses from it. People were looking forward to Monday and reading my memory. Most of them were about Temple. Mm-hmm. That I ended up, compiling all that and putting it in a Word document. And so I have like a 50-page memoir book, so to speak, that I always, refer to. Sometimes I add some things, but I think it's important now that we do have social media. I think it's important to spread the word about some of Coach's philosophies, some of the things he used to do, because he was ahead of his time. And, I don't know with with when it was happening for him, you know, in the age of really you only had word of mouth or newspaper articles. Yeah, I do think it's important to keep some of the memories and some of the stories alive. So the next generation of coach, fan, whoever gets an opportunity to kind of experience some of the same things I did.
Absolutely. This actually leads us well into, we got a mailbag question on our message board. This is a screen name. The screen name is Joe Becca. Question is, Mike, you've shared many wonderful stories about your life experiences over the years, from the obvious many Chaney stories to the less obvious, learning about responsibility from your mom. The stories are good and you're a terrific writer. So my question is, when are you writing your book on Chaney basketball and life lessons learned?
You know, I do get that a lot. I get that question a lot. And, you know, truth be told, that little memoir that I just mentioned, I did actually send that into one publisher just for the heck of it. Mm-hmm. And it did come back rejected. You know, and I know that happens. You know, some of the New York Times best-selling authors get stuff rejected, so that's no big deal. I do enjoy writing. Mm-hmm. I think I think I can help tell a story to a point where people can visualize, but you know, I'm not a professional writer, so maybe I just need somebody to kind of fine tune it. You know, I'm sure there was probably a bunch of stories that nobody really cared about. The people love the Chaney stories, but maybe I need to get rid of some of the other ones.
I'm sure it would be a good read. So Javon, one of the things that Mike said was, you know, I asked him to kind of break down the draft, and he said, you know, I was just, you know, happy and humble to be included. And, you know, he's like, you know, you heard him say, you know, down the stretch there were some guys that were drafted in the late rounds, some of the names I didn't get. And I was, it got, you know, that's where some of us were struggling. I didn't feel like I was struggling. I think you would have had a great draft. Caden was openly telling us, like, man, this is getting hard. I did not have my board going this deep and this far. And, but we had, like I said, we had a great time with it. And I really want to thank Mike for his time. And again, it's always good to catch up with him, because he, again, as much as any player in the history of the program, really has some great perspective on things. And of course, football season is coming up. Like we said before we started talking about Mike Vreeswyk, Javon and I have visions of eating crab cakes at 8:30 in the morning on our way down to Duke. But Javon stopped me on that. Maybe we'll save that for the Navy game. But not too far away from that September 2nd season opener at Duke, 2 rebuilding programs with 2 new head coaches at Temple and Duke. And Temple scrimmaged for the first time on Saturday. And again, we don't see much of anything at all. So we're kind of left to asking the coaches and asking questions during media availability. On Monday, Sam Cohn was there for us. Sam's still going to be doing the pod with us at Al Scoop. He's going to be covering Penn State for the Inquirer as he moves along in his career. But, you know, Sam was one of the reporters there to ask Stan Drayton about that first scrimmage. And, you know, again, I think I said this last week, there are times where Stan will let his guard down a little bit. And then there are other times where he kind of, I think sometimes he gets into this pattern of like maybe saying that one guy's pulling ahead in a position battle, but he'll say, but, you know, everybody in that room's doing well. You know, he talked in generalities, like there was great energy, great effort. Everybody got better, signs of a team that's progressing, and that both teams kind of took their turns doing well. Defense had a couple of sacks that would have really been game day sacks, was one of the things he said. The offense at times moved the ball really, really well. At one point he said we're right on schedule, we're physical on both sides of the football. You know, and then asking, you know, when he was asked about the quarterbacks on DeJuan Mathis and Quincy Patterson, he said at times they were solid as a rock, at times they weren't. They're still learning how to become consistent and poised under pressure. And then he goes on to say, I can't just talk about those two. He mentioned DJ Warner as a true freshman and Mariano Valente, called it a real competition, although I think we can all say that would be totally floored and totally shocked if EJ Warner or Mariano Valente is the starter in the first week of the season. There are a few other things we'll get to in a few minutes here. But we'll talk about the single digits. That was something that was revealed on Monday night. On Friday, Stan Drayton said that the single digit announcements were coming soon. And as I wrote the other day, soon became Monday. And we'll go right into a mailbag question here from Park Al, is the screen name from our, one of our owlscoop.com subscribers on the message board. Park Al's question is biggest surprise, inclusion, and exclusion from the single digiters. Javon, I've got my names here. We're probably, I would imagine, on the same page, but biggest surprise, inclusion, and exclusion in your opinion?
So exclusion, Cameron Ruiz, I thought for sure was going to be one, and that turned out not to be the case. So I think that'd be my biggest exclusion. I'll also throw in the note, if you have a program that makes the single digit something that you have to earn through leadership and ability, the way football is played now and viewed now, you're asking questions if your starting quarterback doesn't have a single digit, as much responsibility and burden and credit and blame all at the same time are placed on the quarterback position these days. It's something to look out for if your quarterback doesn't have a single digit, but Stan Drayton doesn't even have his starting quarterback yet. So It's not that much to read into, but it's always an interesting tidbit whenever you have a program like that.
I wasn't so much, and I know this wasn't quite what you were saying, you're right. In an ideal world, or even I don't know how you'd really say it. Yeah. If the Temple would probably be 2 steps ahead of things if Dwan Mathis had distinguished himself right out of the gate. Dwan's a single digit guy. Am I surprised? No, because I think Stan, again, from the day he was announced, he was asked about Dwan going back to last December, and he said, happy to coach him. And again, I'm paraphrasing here, but he said, he did kind of dip his toe back into thinking about entering the portal. We got to think about why that is. He came here through the portal. He was about to leave in the portal again.
Yeah, he said, we got to make it to the point where, and I quote, the portal isn't even a thought.
Yeah. Yep. And so, I would have been mildly surprised, and I don't even really mean this as a knock on Dwan. I would have been mildly surprised if he became a single digit guy, because I think that the staff was pretty open and honest about saying, hey, we like him, we want to develop him, but he is a new quarterback, not necessarily a new quarterback in college football, but a guy who is yet again playing for another head coach, learning another offense under a new offensive coordinator and Danny Langsdorf. And after being with Rod Carey and his staff last year, I think it was a little bit more damning, and that sounds dramatic, but like a little bit more surprising and a little bit more of like asking questions when a guy like Anthony Russo wasn't a single digit guy. PJ Walker, when he was here, was a single digit guy, wore number 8, and nobody's perfect, but PJ was respected in the locker room, and maybe PJ never becomes a full-time starter in the NFL, but you can see the traits and you can see the arm strength that make him, people can say all they want. Oh, well, he's only in the NFL because he's playing for Matt Rule, but still gets into a preseason game, and he's gotten into some regular season games, and he has
and looked decent in those regular season games.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, not perfect. And again, he's not gonna start over, he's not going to start in Carolina unless there are injuries, but he's a guy that was a very respected leader here. Be a great story if Dwan comes out of the gate and they beat Duke, they beat Lafayette, they beat Rutgers homecoming, then they beat UMass, and they're 4-0 and they're rolling heading into conference play. And Dwan is like 12 touchdowns, 1 interception, and the coaches are raving about him. And, again, there are, we should note that there are still some numbers that can be filled at this point. So again, just to review, Adam Klein, Isaac Moore were awarded numbers 2 and 4. They'll continue to wear number 74 and 63 because the NCAA doesn't allow offensive linemen to wear anything through 50 through 79. Adonicus Sanders is going to wear number 4. Jordan McGee is going to wear number 6. Jalen McMurray, who I think was one of the biggest surprises. And again, tip of the cap to Jalen McMurray, played in 4 games last year.
Jules Martinez loves him. He loves him.
Yep, as second-year freshman. And he's going to wear number 7. Darian Varner is going to wear number 9. But again, the numbers 0, sometimes we forget that 0 can be numbers 0, 1, 3, and 8 are still available. So who knows if they come out rolling and they go 4-0 and Dwan Mathis is dealing and playing really well, and they decide at some point that they're going to award number 8 to Dwan Mathis, then that's a hell of a story to him, for him. So
I think there are 2 guys we almost forgot to mention as exclusions. David Martin Robinson, I think we'll both agree on.
He would be my next
personally. Yeah, he might get one. And then I think Jordan Smith is a guy to look out for. Either him, Ahmad Anderson, or Jose Barbone, one of those pass catchers from last season that were heavily involved coming back this year. I think one of those 3 are an option to get one of those last single-digit numbers.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, well, actually, what makes you say, I know they like Jordan Smith. What makes you say Jordan Smith?
I think when you look at how productive he was last year and you listen to Jafar Williams, who is a receivers coach, right? Talk about Jordan Smith. Like the guy, he's pretty helpful to both groups of guys. He's pretty helpful to the tight ends and he's pretty helpful to the receivers as far as mentoring and, helping them be in the right spots on the offense. And then production-wise, like I said, pretty good tight end, pretty good receiving tight end last season. So I think he's one of those wild cards to look out for to potentially get a single digit if they're still going to hand them out as the season progresses.
And Adonicus Sanders, again, we should know, and I literally can't remember if we said this 5 or 10 minutes ago. So they have decided single digits in a number of different ways since Al Golden started this tradition. Steve Adazio was the only coach who just didn't engage with it. Some people think that Rod Carey didn't engage with it. He did, but last year his thing was essentially, we just weren't quite sure if anybody was really worthy of it, and we didn't want to award single digits just to award single digits. And it sounded like he had the support of the leadership council there, who really honestly knows. But in this case, this time around, I asked Stan last week, are you guys still deciding? Is it still like a joint venture or joint decision between the coaches and the players? And he said, no, it's just going to be the coaches deciding it this year. I think the guys have kind of lost touch a little bit with what it really means to be a single digit. So we're going to have the coaches decide on it. So, I would imagine that there maybe are a couple of guys on the cusp, maybe like a David Martin Robinson, or maybe it is a Cam Ruiz, where the coaches are saying, hey, we really, really want to set a high standard. And maybe, who knows, maybe they're having conversations with guys and like, hey, you're this close, but who knows what it's like if they're saying like, hey, we expect you to be a half hour early for lifting and not 5 minutes early for lifting. Maybe they are really, really, really putting them through the ringer. But I mean, props to a guy like Jalen McMurray. I think Adonicus Sanders is kind of another reminder, like you can be a transfer and come in. You can be like a Rock Ya-Sin who came in, transferred up a level, earns a single digit, eventually goes on to the NFL. I'm not totally shocked on Adonicus Sanders. It's just every time his name came up, Stan Drayton's eyes would light up a little bit. And then, right before the announcements came out Monday night, Stan was asked about him and he said, this was his quote, he's got it. He's a real guy. Sam asked him about Adonicus Sanders. I mean, he's a tough nut, comes to work every single day. I love the way he catches a tough ball. People are pulling his jersey off and he finds a way to catch the football. I mean, he's a Temple tough guy. And I heard that. I didn't know for sure that they were going to be announcing the single digits Monday night, but I thought at this point, I won't be totally surprised there. But would he be? I don't know who. Any surprise inclusions here? Would you put him in there, or is it more Jalen McMurray?
I wouldn't call either one of them. Well, McMurray, I guess I'd call a surprise because you'd hear all the things of like the guy's probably never gotten to be in his life in the classroom. He's always early to the facility, lifting and putting in his own work and studying film. So, the personality traits fit for McMurray. It's just on my projected depth chart to start the season, I didn't think he'd be over a guy like Dom Hill or Iverson Clement in that room. So you can probably say, as of right now, he's the third cornerback on the depth chart. I think that's going to be my biggest surprise. But Adonicus Sanders, I was fully expecting him to be one of those guys that the coaching staff liked, a wide receiver coming up from a Power 5 program. And they needed a premier pass catcher in that room. And if he pans out to be as good as I believe the coaching staff thinks he is, we know Temple fans, you're going to hear a lot of, now imagine if Rod Carey's staff didn't prompt Jaden Blue to transfer out or something like that, the way the fan base gets. So it'll be an interesting season watching Adonicus Sanders.
Yeah, and I mean, when he ended up transferring to Temple, Kyle had talked to Kelly Quinlan, who covers Georgia Tech for Jackets Online and the Rivals and Yahoo Network, and I can't remember Kelly's exact quote, but Kelly essentially told Kyle, like, yeah, they got a good player. The consensus was that, hey, that was probably maybe their best ad in the transfer portal, and we would just hear good things about him. And then again, the coaches continued to rave about him. I thought that maybe, again, this is all supposition on our part. We're not in these meetings. We can ask questions all we want. I thought maybe Wisdom Corsi might be a guy. They talked about him as in general. They've talked about him, making progress on the field, off the field. A guy who would intern. They talked about how good he's been outside the classroom as an intern. They had also, I think, selected him to attend the Black Student Athlete Summit in Houston. And it just seems like a guy who is really well respected and really has his act together off the field too. And I thought I wouldn't be surprised if Wiz is a guy too, but maybe, again, guessing on my part, but, and this is something we'll get to in a second here. I think Chris Wiesehan, as much as he talks about cross-training his guys in the offensive line, I asked him last week, is Wiz the guy at center? And he kind of stopped short of it. So again, I wonder if Wiz is another guy, maybe like DeJuan, they go out and start off 4-0 or 3-1. There are no fumbled exchanges between him, if he's starting, between him and DeJuan Mathis. Maybe they say, yep, he's a single digit guy. So I thought maybe it's a slight surprise that he got left out there, but again, props to Jalen McMurray. I mean, he's a guy that again, Cam Ruiz and Keyshawn Pollard are going to be done after this season. You need more than two cornerbacks this season alone. So if McMurray's that third guy, that's good for them. And, maybe David Martin Robinson and Wiz are guys that are coming up. But, again, if I were Stan Drayton, I think I'd said this before, if you're coming in and you're a brand new guy and you've coached Texas, you've coached it, you've spent some time in the NFL, you've coached Ohio State, part of me doesn't blame him for saying, like, I'm going to make sure I set a really, really high standard before we start giving out single digits. So
yeah, he's been at the highest of high levels. So
yeah. So again, they said in the release that they put out Monday that some additional players could be added at later dates. When, we'll find out. We'll see when that is. There's more media availability coming up. Stan Drayton's going to have his starting this coming Monday. That's going to be the first of his next several weekly Monday press conferences at noon. So we'll ask about that. Just talked about this a few seconds ago. A few other things to kind of check off the list here, things that I'm kind of curious about, and I want to run this by you as well, Javon. Again, with a couple weeks left before that opener at Duke, things that I'm kind of looking at, things are on my mind. I'm really curious about the center position. Again, I thought that it was interesting that Chris Wiesehan still seemed a tad uncertain about center when I asked him about Wiz. And I said, is that is Wiz the guy there? And this is what Chris Wiesehan said.
Is Wiz still the guy kind of leading the competition at center, or is that still a little bit more?
It's all wide open. It's all wide open.
Who else is in there with him? Kind of.
I probably have Wiz. I have Thoman. I have Klein that I could put in there. Obviously, I have Rich Rod. So I'm going to keep that fluid. I have to make hard decisions.
So again, he stopped short. Not that, I think, I'm not saying that Chris Wiesehan isn't a guy that won't give credit where credit's due. He'll rave about some of the guys he's coached, like a Deion Dawkins and so on and so forth, but stopped a little short. because he said, that that snap, that's the most important thing there. And then I asked him if it would be ideal to have Adam Klein settle in at right tackle. He said this.
I mean, I know you talk about being able to move guys around a lot, but is your hope that you can keep Adam at right tackle and really let him settle in there and have somebody else kind of take over at center? Or is that not how you really think?
You'd like to have that stability on the edge, communication with the quarterback, right? I mean, those two did a really good job. I'm talking about Adam and Isaac as freshmen that played in a lot of games that really helped us protection-wise, and they're helping our quarterback now, but at the same time, the snap's really important. So you better have a guy that can do that because he starts to play.
So, again, I don't think any of us would be totally surprised if first play of the game, for what it's worth, if Wisdom Quarsh is the starting center, Adam Klein's the starting right tackle. But if they see any uncertainty there, I wouldn't be totally surprised if Wiese says, nope, we got to move Adam over. When Sam Cohn asked Adam Klein on Monday if he was settled in there, Adam said, I'm kind of paraphrasing here, I'm taking some excerpts from that conversation. He said, I'd say most of my time has been at right tackle in fall camp. I feel comfortable there. I know Coach Wiese likes me there, but we do a lot of cross training, so I'll always be ready if he needs me at center, if my name's called. And then Sam said, as of now, Adam Klein is a right tackle, and he said yes. So I think you're probably looking at a situation where he's at right tackle and Wisdom Quarsh he's at center, but they've talked about Bryce Doman coming along too. So we'll see. Thought that was interesting. At running back, how do you, I have my thoughts on this, Javon, and we talked about this a little bit last week. What are your thoughts on how the running back position is shaping up?
I'm honestly, every time I've tried to guess with that position since the spring, I've been wrong. So, don't take my money to the bank. I thought once Hubbard transferred in, it was going to be him and Clement. Then Clement gets moved to defensive back. So at that point, I thought it'd be the Hubbard show and maybe Ed Stady could steal some catches in, but not catch some touches. And then you hear that Trey Blair is still a guy that they like. And then Jakari Norwood transfers in from Illinois. I think it's pretty clear when Drayton says he still wants more out of his running backs, like he means it, because everyone's getting an opportunity to log some snaps back there. So, and I thought Hubbard would be the runaway guy. And Stan just won't say it. So, I mean, right now, I guess it might be a three-headed monster with Hubbard, Sadie, and Norwood. But like I said, don't take it to the bank because I haven't guessed a single thing right about that room. I can't get a good read on the coaching staff on it. Yeah.
And it looked like Trey Blair scored a touchdown in the scrimmage. Again, it didn't look like they were necessarily tackling to the ground, but I mean, that was one of the plays that they chose to put out on video there. And Trey's got some ability. There's part of me that still thinks that it's Darvon Hubbard and Ed Sadie and then everyone else. But then I don't know, Stan just seems to light up when he talks about Jakari Norwood. And again, here's a guy who rushed for less than 250 yards in his career at Illinois. He's a guy from Florida. And I still feel like Stan is just holding out for something big there. And, again, he was asked about him on Monday and he said, I'll tell you what, in his first opportunity to play in a full scrimmage, he was very physical. Again, these are just, I'm paraphrasing here through some excerpts, pleasantly surprised how tough he was on contact. He's a man on a mission. He's very businesslike. He's very serious. And then he kind of dials it back and he says he doesn't have the full plate of every play in the playbook, but he fits the personality of that room. And, so I feel like I kind of read it like he is really hoping for like that home run threat in him. And again, be a hell of a story for Temple and their coaching staff, right? You look smart by taking a guy out of the portal, a Florida guy who had played in the Big Ten, but had kind of played sparingly and just needed the right opportunity. And it does seem to be a little wide open. But I just think that's kind of interesting to follow. And again, I don't know that any coach will come out and say, oh, Darvon Hubbard's our guy. Everyone else is like significantly behind him. But this is all the stuff I think that's going to be sorted out in the non-conference schedule. And then you look at the pass rush. Again, that pass rush, Antoine Smith, it was animated as always. He was he was kind of funny and kind of comical in spring ball. Had the chance to talk to him Friday, and he was pretty amped up and, was like, hey, nobody has experience until I coach them. He was pretty, had a couple of, quotable moments where he said, hey, this team was 119th in sacks last year. And I think they were 114th actually, but he's like, and I will not be part of that. And good for him for saying that, because they were abysmal at getting to the quarterback last year. And again, we know that sack leader, that potential sack leader, does not have to be a defensive lineman. It could be one of those overhang guys as an outside linebacker. And Antoine talked about how he's going to be working with those guys too. But I think Darian Varner is a really interesting guy too. He's kind of been one of those it guys in, I don't want to say necessarily the spring, but I think like really ever since August has come around, people have been talking about him more. Like a Zach Gill, even though Zach Gill didn't play last year, Zach Gill. Everybody likes Zach Gill. He's a great leader. And then you start hearing about Darian Varner. He shed 20 pounds. They're moving him outside. And here's a real interesting situation for him. He led the team in sacks last year, but he had 3 sacks. And I'm not trying to take anything away from him, but now you're a single digit guy. And I don't know how Darian Varner's mind works, but the single digit thing is a cool tradition. And that number 9 brings some significance. Wearing that number 9 is a serious thing. You have several Temple football players who have worn that number 9 who have either gone to the NFL or once in the NFL or still in the NFL. Muhammad Wilkerson, not in the NFL anymore, but was a late first round pick. Still had a decent career. Jacob Martin, still in the NFL with the Jets. Matt Ioannidis, still in the NFL with the Panthers. Michael Dogby, still in the NFL with the Arizona Cardinals. Quincy Roche, still in the NFL with the Giants, right? With the Giants.
Yeah. Him, Ojulari, and Thibodeau are competing to be that 3-man edge rush rotation.
Yeah. So that's a big deal to get that number 9, and again, we haven't talked to him since the single digits were awarded. He was one of the guys that was made available on Monday, but again, we didn't know at that point. So I don't know if that's half. Again, I'm sure he's earned it. Half. I wonder if part of that is like, hey, we really like you. And now, and again, I don't know how it works, if they got to choose their numbers or if they said you're wearing number 9, but a little bit of healthy amount of pressure with that number, right?
Yeah, that's like, playing for the Cowboys and they tell you you're wearing 88, or, being a big man in the NBA period and you're wearing 33, or 23. Like, that's just, some numbers come with pressure. You can't wear the number 3 in a lot of sports without being ready to bring it. So, with Temple, like you said, that number 9, especially for, a defensive player, you got to bring it. You got to bring your lunch with you every day. Wilkerson, Roche, like those are 2, you think of Temple edge rush. Those are 2 of the first names that come to mind. Dogby, Jacob Martin, like that number 9 comes with some real expectations. So you'll really see the mental fortitude of Darian Varner this season. And we'll see if that number 9 either makes him, live up to the pressure or fold under it.
Yeah, because they are looking for that next great edge rusher. I mean, not that they wouldn't take like, hey, if Zach Gill, I don't know if Zach Gill's this guy. If like they had an interior guy who ends up getting 8 or 9 sacks, they'll take it. But they do need that next guy. Who's their next? I mean, their last greatest pass rusher was Arnold Ebiketie. They really didn't have that last year with Arnold at Penn State off through the transfer portal. So that'll be another interesting thing to watch. Javon, before we close things out, and again, there's still time, got a couple weeks before the opener, as we're getting a little closer, where's your head at with this team? A little bit, sometimes when Kyle's on, he'll say, I'm skewing negative, I'm skewing positive. Heading toward the opener, are you skewing negative where you're like, this is a huge rebuild? I know Duke's a rebuild, but I think they're losing by a couple touchdowns in this game. Or are you starting to kind of skew like, maybe they got their act together?
I think heading into Navy, they're a 3-3 team, right? 3-3 team, 3-4, excuse me, 3-4 team. And then if Drayton, I said Navy and USF are 2 back-to-back games. That's going to be the 2-game cluster of this season that will make or break the fan approval rating of Stan Drayton. If he can win those 2, the team is guaranteed 5 wins in my eyes. You go from last season and the year before to 5 seasons in your first year, and you consider the recruits he's landed already and the transfers he's landed, he'll have the full backing of the fan base. So I'm in that 5-win range. The most will be 6 if they can still win against ECU in the last game of the season, and it helps that game is at home. The problem is, I wouldn't be shocked if their confidence is gone by that game, because before that, there's Houston and Cincinnati back to back. By far, the 2 best teams in the conference, and they're ranked 23 and 24 in the AP poll. So 5 wins, I think, is where I'm at with them, possibly 6. So they're rebuilding, but it's not an awful rebuild.
So if they're 3-4 heading into Navy on October 29th, the end of October, where are the 3 wins coming from? How do you see that breaking out?
So 3-4 going into the Navy game would be a win against Lafayette, a win against UMass, and a win against either Memphis or Duke. If they can win both of those, then I'll guarantee a 500 record. But I think if I were a betting man, I'd say lose the opener at Duke. And then Memphis, they have a good history with Memphis. And that game is a chance to go into the bye week over 500. So I think history would compel me to choose them to win that Memphis game. Then, like I said, Navy and USF have to be wins, and you see what they can do against East Carolina.
Yeah, I think I'll give Stan a lot of credit if they can go down and beat Duke in the season opener. Again, Mike Elko's got his hands full down there. He's definitely rebuilding. They're looking at a lot of the same things. Who's our quarterback? Who's our impact guy at every position? And it's not the most accurate comparison, because this is the first year of Stan Drayton's tenure, whereas I can't remember if it was the second year or the third year off the top of my head where Matt Rule goes down and they win at Vanderbilt against a lower tier SEC team, but they still go on the road and beat an SEC team. So they'll show me something if they go down there with all the question marks they have, all the new install they've done, and they go down and beat Duke, even if Duke turns out to be like a 2-10 team that gets knocked around the ACC and their 2 wins come from non-conference games. I still think that'll be I wouldn't want to call it a statement win, but still impressive nonetheless. So I think it's getting a little interesting as we get closer to the opener. Like I said, I think Stan's starting to let his guard down a little bit more. Sometimes I think the coordinators will speak a little bit more freely, but those are just, I think, a few of the interesting position battles to watch. Again, you'd like to think that they like what they see at corner with Cam Ruiz and Keyshawn Paul, but again, interesting that neither one of those guys got single digits, but that Jalen McMurray did. So question marks at safety, question marks at a lot of position, question marks at quarterback. So again, I don't know the method behind Stan's madness. For all I know, they could be sitting around saying, hey, DeJuan's a couple steps ahead of everybody. Then it's Quincy, and we like what Mariano Valenti's given us as, scrapping along. And we think EJ Smith has a bright future, but we want to redshirt him. But EJ Warner, But I think it's going to be an interesting couple of weeks, heading into the opener. I think some things are starting to become a little clearer. Of course, I think the single digit stuff kind of amps up those conversations, but we shall see. So thank you all for listening and joining us for another episode of The Scoop. Thank you to Mike Vreeswyk for joining us for the pod and for our ongoing Legends of North Broad Street series. And thank you to Javon Edmonds for being with me. And so I didn't have to do this podcast by myself. So looking forward to covering the Duke game with you in a couple of weeks, buddy. And we will talk to you guys soon.